We're starting the
I think
meeting.
we're good to go, yeah.
We're good to go.
Okay.
Right, so the first question today is coming from Mike. Do you want to introduce yourself, Mike?
Michael Brunner from NL11 APD. We want to know the truth for us and for those we love. Now, the mantra has always been follow the science. There are many ethical regulations that the British government has to adhere to before approving experimental vaccination. Primarily, the decision of the JCVI legally must be adhered to. In the case of vaccinating children, recommended that the risks do not outweigh the benefits. And yet the government are now ignoring the science and pressing ahead with the programme. How do you continue to support the government?
Well, the government is going along with the science and the JCVI, so
Not so much anymore, is it?
no.
JCVI.
So, no, please, actually, this is a public meeting, and I really don't mind if it is treated like that, because, you know, this is fair enough. But the government's gone along with the science.
Is it true that the JCVI recommended that they do go ahead with injecting the children with this?
No, I think they've said that it is under guidance. They are happy for it to go ahead. So there's a thing, isn't it, called the it's Gillick competence. So anything that happens to a child, any medic in the country has to believe that that child is Gillick competent to receive it, and then also has to have parental consent. Now that is essentially what I believe JCVI have said. If those two things are complied with, then that child can have, at a certain age, can have a vaccine.
That was due to contraception, though, wasn't it? That actual Gillick competency. It wasn't anything to do with this, was it? Which is totally different thing.
It's used throughout medicine, though, isn't it? It's a precedent,
A very dangerous one.
but it is a precedent, which is what our law is based on.
For untested, unproven.
Experiment.
Okay.
Next question.
Ruth Luna, N110SH. We want to know the truth for us and for those we love. So according to a Freedom of Information request, Northampton General Hospital took delivery of 5 PCR machines in October, November 2019. The World Bank records show that they've been circulating around the world for 2 years previous, including the UK, USA, Switzerland, Israel and France. So are you satisfied that Northampton Hospital's acquisition of the PCR testing machines prior to the pandemic, of which there are no supporting figures for, was for a legitimate purpose, and if so, do you know what the purpose was for?
So I've never heard of that before, but I'm quite sure they bought whatever equipment they needed for whatever purpose they could serve it.
Under the Freedom of Information Act, the National Fund declined to comment as to why the machines were purchased and for if they were used for anything other than.
Yeah, right. I'm afraid I honestly don't know anything about that. Yeah. Well, I believe, I'm assuming there's a set of questions in there. I will ask. So no problem.
Okay, my name's Paul Fox, N114HU.
You really don't have to do in this case.
We want to know the truth for us and those we love. I have a small business in Daventry. I don't want another lockdown. I believe I have the right to earn a living and feed my family. I believe that every business that puts food on the table is essential. What would the situation be whereby you could no longer support extending emergency powers?
Well, firstly, I think you should. Firstly, taking emergency powers was extraordinary, and I'd like to think we will never ever have to do that again. You also don't know the conversations, and I wouldn't expect anybody to. But I'm like you, right? I'm an individual. I was in exactly the same position as you at the very start of this pandemic. I had very little knowledge of what was going on or why it was going on. Even though I was a member of the government, you know, I don't sit on the, actually that's not quite true, because I did sit on a couple of the COVID-O committees, as they're called, where the scientists came to advise the government about what was going on. But in those situations, when you're presented with the numbers that I think the Prime Minister was presented with about the number of potential deaths, I think you do take the actions that are recommended to you by those officials. Now, as time has gone by, and I know that some of you don't think the vaccine is a brilliant thing, but as time has gone by and the vaccine's been taken up, that has changed the dynamic of the conversation completely within government. So I don't think I'll have to worry about supporting another lockdown, because I generally do not think there will be one. I think society and government has moved on from that, and we are an extremely well vaccinated nation with, I mean, maybe not the wall of resistance that Chris Whitty said, but a decent barrier between us. So I generally don't think that there needs to be one. I was the minister that brought in. Well, yeah, because it was based on what. Well, it depends on what the science is. And it does, though, doesn't it?
No,
I think I support local businesses. Well, I'm afraid I support local businesses by maintaining the fact that I'm confident in the people that advise the government on these matters, and that includes people like John Van Tam, who I have seen in a meeting. I've seen how he operates, and he's not bullying or anything like that. He's very matter of fact about this is what we know and this is what we can estimate from this, right? And that's quite straightforward. And on that basis, yeah, I will be happy to support something in the future if it was based on that.
The alarming thing is that
I'll come back to you, sir.
Ian Ferguson made all these predictions, which were all patently wrong. And if you're a betting man, I know you are, Chris, because so am I, he said the other day
Neil Ferguson,
there won't be another lockdown. Now, the minute he said that, I wanted to go to the bookies and have a bet that there would be. Because everything he said has been proven to be wrong by a factor of normally 50. So that's what worries me. I think it's guaranteed we'll have a side bet that we are guaranteed to have another lockdown, and I think it'll be just after the climate shenanigans up in Glasgow. Under the 10th.
Thank you.
Sorry, this gentleman didn't finish.
Yeah, no, my question was, at what point would you not support another lockdown? What measure would you personally have to say, I'm not going to support this any longer?
Well, it would be based on those people giving government advice, and if that when they started to not sing from the same hymn sheet, be of one voice, then it would be that.
Who's challenging them?
That's
No,
right.
I'm sorry.
No,
Tony.
okay.
Oh, sorry.
Question from Richard, please.
Richard Pricer. So the last time that we had a brand new type of vaccine rolled out for a supposed pandemic was pandemics for the swine flu. During those initial stages, called them trials, one person died and everything stopped. According to the yellow card reports that we have, up until the 15th of September, we've had 1,651 deaths and 1.2 million vaccine injuries. These are the official numbers, which are supposedly understated according to a number of measures. Given that the campaign is continuing, do you continue to be satisfied that people are able to give informed consent to this new novel vaccine being rolled out?
Yes.
Given that
Yes.
the ingredients list remains unpublished,
Yeah.
but it is known that those ingredients do continue to change.
Yes.
So despite the fact that nobody knows what's in them, the only thing that we know for certain is that the composition of the vaccine is changing. Given those two facts, you are still confident that people
Yes.
are
Yeah,
able
because
to give informed consent.
You cannot tell me there is a conspiracy amongst every medic, every nurse in this country who are willing to inject something into someone else and themselves that is not.
Well,
is not
clearly
gone
there
through
are a
all
good
the
few
same-
who are not willing to do that, who are leaving the profession rather than carry on, who are not willing to have it themselves, doctors who are not willing to have it themselves,
As of myself.
nurses who are not willing to have it
and
themselves.
that is fair enough,
Yeah.
and completely fair enough. But as I'm quite sure you'll be able to say, the vast majority are happy to go along with it. And I'm not a medic, right? So I have to go by. I mean, yes, I've had both. I've had the AstraZenecas. I was very happy to do so. I just do not believe that a trained medic in this country would not only do anything other than do good by me. And so yes, it's based on trust, but yes.
Right. Elizabeth, would you like to ask?
For the tenants in our community, can you clarify who will be responsible for any death or injury on the school premises following the injection given that the head teacher and teachers are in loco parentis?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
And
so I
do
can
these
come back to
schools
you.
have the right insurance to cover such an event?
I would assume so, yes. Because that's why, well, yeah, I think the answer to your insurance question would be yes, because they have all the public liability that you'd expect anyway. But the first question, I honestly don't know, so I'll come back to you.
And can I say, I'm a social worker,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that Gillick competence is a double-edged sword, because it gives the child the legal right to say no to the vaccine.
Yeah, no, I know that, and I think that's. But isn't that surely that's what gives it that extra legitimacy?
Because the Children Act 1989 declares that the welfare of the child is paramount.
Yeah.
That means paramountcy should overdo Gillick competence.
Yeah, but it's a choice. There's a choice for the medic as well, who's making that judgment call.
Highly trained medics, just people that say need to do vaccines, are they? They're not doctors. Is there going to be any resuscitation equipment in the schools in case it goes wrong? These are people's children.
Yeah, absolutely. These are people's children.
And there are many parents who are not happy for their children to have this vaccine. And COVID apparently didn't affect children. So why do they need the vaccine?
Right.
It's probably worth pointing out that there was a mass vaccination event in Sydney, in Australia, of school children. 2 of them died.
On the first day.
On the first day.
Yeah.
And under common law,
yeah,
a head teacher is personally liable.
That's correct as well.
And as far as liability goes, we know that the manufacturer has no liability. The manufacturer specifically excluded any kind of liability, anything going wrong with any of these vaccines, all of them. Under all jurisdictions that have accepted these particular vaccines, the four major ones from the 4 major manufacturers, none of those manufacturers have any liability anywhere for anything going wrong.
I'm not sure that's correct. I'm generally not sure that's correct.
Okay. Quite shocking.
That's
shocking.
if it's a vaccine.
No, I didn't know that.
If it's another medical procedure, they are liable.
And they're not vaccines.
On that, if you weren't sure of that, you really need to consider
What else do you need?
what are you going to allow to happen to the schools in Daventry? So if you go ahead and research now and you find out that they have been given legal immunity to experimental, inadequately tested vaccines that are killing.
I'm sorry, I just do not believe that they're inadequately tested.
It leads on to my question.
They're under emergency authorisation use, and they're experimental, and it ends at the end of 2023.
It's really worth checking this out.
Yeah.
Big stuff, Chris. It's big stuff, Chris.
Yeah, I completely understand
Just sit
what
and
goes on
just take
there.
advice from unelected advisors.
You've got kids, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. We both have
If you actually look at the data coming out of Israel, not only have they been, most of them been doubly jabbed, it's the most jabbed country in the world. A lot of them have had booster shots. They're seeing the most COVID, even more than they had at the beginning. So why are they seeing the most COVID cases when they've all been not just doubly jabbed, but had the booster?
Yeah, but
And in the middle of summer.
I'm not a medic, but no jab makes you completely immune from everything. And as we were told by this, it's to stop hospitalisations and deaths.
Yes, in Israel it's not like. But anyway, let's move on to the next question.
Hospitalisations and deaths. Why are the figures of deaths testimony higher?
That's my question.
Yeah, sorry.
That's my question. It's an interesting point, Chris, that 12 months ago, the daily death count that was pushed out by the BBC was sort of 15, 20 or so. We'd all had holidays. I was in Corfu a year ago today. We'd all had free chips from the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It was fantastic. We all had a bit of a party. And the deaths were in the double figures. Now, the daily death count today and for the last 3 weeks has been sort of 160, 170, 200. In some cases, it's 10 times and more what it was 12 months ago. But you've got 80% of your people are vaccinated. What the hell is going on? And if we continue at that sort of 10 times rate, there's a day coming in February when we're going to lose 18,500 of our citizens in one day. So the figure, all I'm going to do is ridicule the figures because something is really awry.
Yeah, no, I
unless
understand.
the vaccine isn't so good.
Yeah, I understand that. But if there was no vaccine, what would you expect the number to be?
This is the question. There wasn't a vaccine a year ago, and we were losing 20, and we have got a vaccine today, and we're losing 200. So that makes me think.
So you are Yeah, so you're drawing the conclusion.
We're
that because
attributing it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do see some
We've got-
causality.
We've got more questions that we would like to.
We've got a lot of people in nursing homes. And what killed them? Especially the end of life care. They actually use it in America when they actually kill people. It's actually a drug called midazolam. It stops people feeling thirsty.
Can we'll deal with that at the end of the meeting if we've got time to. Right, moving on to Joe.
We actually asked this question at a school today, the school my child goes to. It's the question I was going to ask you. And it was, do we know if the schools are being incentivised to inject the children? Because we know they was being incentivised to test the children. And the teacher said we don't really have anything to do with that. But the other teacher said we're just told to promote. That was what she said to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think the schools
Promote,
do, but
but an
doctors and
experimental
physicians do get,
vaccine.
and pharmacists do.
When the risk is so low to children. COVID is such a low risk to children, and you're planning to inject my children with an
No,
experimental drug.
we're giving your children the option, if they're of a certain age, to have
Not
that
really
vaccine
when you're being told
with
to
your-
just promote.
Have a free ice cream.
There's no other
no,
side to
well,
it.
I mean,
There's no other side that's been given to my children. They sing
We should be
songs.
promoting to research it ourselves.
They sing songs about being jabbed. There's no other side to it. It's promote.
Can I just say today,
Are you happy about that?
COVID was also downgraded to flu status today.
Good.
So why are we still continuing with this regime, Chris? This is very, very worrying.
So, well, because either because it's working, which you obviously don't believe it is, or because it's finishing off a programme because we'd obviously want to get as many of the population vaccinated as
Yeah,
you
but
as you
children
can.
have no risk. Please
Zero
try to see
risk,
there's zero
yeah.
risk
Okay.
for
And also,
children.
this
And
time
that's
last year, the average age of death was 81.
Yeah.
This time last year.
The government knows that.
I think the sticky point for a lot of people is that as far as kids are concerned, there is virtually zero risk to children from the virus. But there is a known risk to children from the vaccine.
Yeah.
And yet the vaccine does not provide any ability to anyone to stop them passing the virus on to another person.
There's no
It may
medical
lessen their
reason for
symptoms.
children to have it.
It may lessen their chances of contracting the virus by about 10% roughly, but it doesn't stop anyone from passing it on. And a person who has the virus, whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic, has approximately the same viral load as somebody who has been double vaccinated. So kids can't get the virus, it can't hurt them. The vaccine can hurt them. And kids who have the virus or the vaccine are at the same risk of passing it on to anybody else. So the vaccine doesn't protect, the vaccine in children does not protect anybody else. And there's no benefit to the kids themselves, but there is risk. These things, these things are undeniable facts.
Which was all said by the gentleman whose name I can't remember, who is the head of the JVCI, when he said at the end that he was willing to give the guidance that you just been to.
The Gillick competence.
No, that's part of your, I can't remember the...
Have you heard of the Nuremberg Code?
Have I heard of the Nuremberg Code? No, I have not heard of the Nuremberg Code.
Oh my God. I'm sure you must have heard of the
Oh
Nuremberg
yeah,
trial.
I've heard of the Nuremberg trial.
And the Nuremberg Code came out of the Nuremberg trial. And
Sorry, I thought it was in relation to this.
Yes,
Sorry,
it
Well,
is
it
in
is.
relation to this.
Okay, I thought the lady was talking about something.
Adrian, did you
Yes, hello, Chris. Why did you support the mandatory injecting of healthcare staff, not giving them the choice, so that we are going to lose healthcare staff who decide they don't want to take the risk of this vaccine? You supported that?
I'd like to know the answer.
He did.
Because I was helping the elderly.
Yeah, but well,
We know you get pressure on children.
strange enough, you do not get pressured. I think what you believe happens in Parliament and what happens in Parliament is we are given advice that you're given the same advice that you see on television, and I come down on the side that I'd much rather have elderly people protected by people who've had the vaccine.
But their
I wouldn't take advice off the television, that's for sure.
but
That's why I don't watch it, man.
That's right.
That's from the people who I generally do trust, the Chris Whitties and the John Van Tans of this world.
Nobody's
So
challenging them though, Chris.
They're compromised.
There are loads of people, there are literally thousands of top people who can't challenge them.
You know,
Too
Chris,
many
that they got
conflicts of interest
Chris
in all of
Whitty
it.
got 43 million £200 from the Bill and Melinda Gates. That's compromised. And that's what we're worried about. You are not protecting us, the people, you're protecting Big Pharma. That's what we're worried about. And we're not seeing anything back from you on our side. Nothing.
Well, I'm afraid because I'm
Yes, Marcus Fleisch.
Yeah, good. What I see is the vast majority of my constituents who have willingly gone to get the vaccine because they truly also, as I do, believe what they've been advised, and essentially I stand with them.
Yeah.
But what about Dr. Robert Malone, who invented the mRNA technology that's in these vaccines, who's called for it to be halted, and yet people are still going ahead against it, and he's invented it. And then you've got Luc Montagnier, Nobel Prize winner, who is talking about antibody-dependent enhancement, which will be killing millions over the next few years, according to him, next couple of years. So Mike Uden, former Vice President of Pfizer, all coming out and saying this is bad news, this is going to cause millions of deaths, it needs to stop. And then you've got Dr. Tess Lowry, who's also written to Dr. Rain, head of the MHRA, isn't it? Called for it to stop because of all the deaths and all the adverse reactions. You know, there's huge numbers of doctors. There's the Great Barrington Declaration, and all these doctors have signed. This is not just a few doctors. They're all speaking out, and you've got serious, people, Nobel Prize winners, vice presidents of vaccine companies, all talking out, and yet it's carrying on.
They're getting
all over the world, and they're being censored. They are being censored. Why? Why are they being censored? We want to hear what Chris says, please.
Sorry, I just don't think first, I don't think they're being censored, and secondly, the vast body of medical opinion sits on this side of on what I would say is my side of the argument.
It is on the mainstream.
Right, we're moving on now. Alan, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Asking as a health professional, and given that published suicide figures are now 2 months overdue, can you advise us and update us as statistics and support for mental health caused by COVID lockdown?
Yeah, there's as in individual spending, there is a huge amount of money. I can't remember the bid. I will write to you if I may, because there's millions and millions being spent just in Northamptonshire itself on increasing mental health capacity, mental health well-being from grassroots upwards. So yes, I'll get you the figures for that.
Can I just add to that? When are they going to release the figures for last year's suicides? Because they're way overdue.
I don't know.
No. But could you find that out for us, please?
I'll
I'd really appreciate that. And why are they overdue? I'd like to know that too.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think you're seeing, or trying to see a bit of conspiracy where there is none. Okay. So, I'm quite happy to believe that people, I understand why you say it that way, which is why I would love to provide you with those figures. And I'll try and focus on that.
The actual PCR test is 90% positive, so...
If we go through the questions that we've got, and then if we've got time at the end, then people can ask their questions. Right, Karina, you've got a question.
So, in the USA, a Supreme Court judge has recently ruled that the Federal Communication Commission must answer 11,000 pages of evidence about the dangers of 5G rollout to all life, human and wildlife, before any other work continues. If, as you voting record in the House appearing to suggest, you're happy to support the continued rollout of vaccination technologies that is new, previously unused, lacking any long-term data, and which is also known to cause side effects, including death. Are you also happy to support the continued rollout of other technologies, which similarly lack long-term safety data, such as 5G? So it's a 5G question.
The answer is yes.
Right, okay. No. Now we're going to move back to Adrian. We've got another question.
Because I've enjoyed all the mantras we've had from the government over the last 18 months, starting with 2 weeks to flatten the curve and squash the sombrero and protect the NHS and clap the sky and all the many things that dear Boris has come up with in the last 18 months. But the most sinister one, and had I said a year ago, stood here a year ago and said, God, I tell you what will happen in a year, Chris, we'll have these passports that will be able to give you access to anything. And if you don't have one of the special passports, you won't be able to go. You won't be able to go on the planes. You won't be able to go to the horse races. You won't be able to go to the football match. You'd have said you're a mad conspiracy theorist, Adrian. And I would have agreed. I'd say that's insanity. But it looks like we're getting damn close to that now. They're just about starting it in Scotland. Again, when the government says something's not going to happen, we always know that is going to happen. So they say there's no problem with the petrol. We all go and buy petrol because we know there's a problem. Tell me when the vaccine apartheid passport system is going to come in, just so I can make preparations.
I don't think it will.
Why do you say that?
It's under
Maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, pretty much everything's been under review since this pandemic started because no one knew what direction things were going to go in, and but they didn't. They really, genuinely didn't.
Can I ask you, would you vote for that or against that?
It depends on.
It should depend on anything. Apartheid is absolutely. Yes, that's right. Are you a conservative or not?
conservative or not?
I thought
conservatives
can I just let me? I'll give you one very good reason, away from the science, why I would happily vote for it, and it is because someone, and I'm sure they're not stood here, printed up a load of stickers to try and stick up my house about vaccine passports, right? And managed to get the wrong house, managed to get my neighbours, and for the first time. I was elected in 2010. That's the first time anyone has tried to physically intimidate me to do something. Right? I'm afraid if I were even vaguely interested in these arguments, to give way would lead to other intimidation going forward, and there is no way at all. That's the first time I've ever had to call the police in my time as an MP. And
it's hardly murder, though.
No, I know. No.
You know.
No. It's just it's how this is how
because
it starts,
there's never
right?
been a situation like this.
This is no. I disagree. There's been loads of times where I've really upset all sorts of people because, unfortunately, that's what politicians seem to do.
This is
this is way bigger. This
Okay,
is the whole world.
this is World War. It's not World War.
How many times have you had this many people come to a constituency like this to a meeting to you?
Quite a few, but
This many?
I've had way more.
On what subject?
Travellers would be the biggest one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the question wasn't answered.
Sorry,
it wasn't answered.
Would you support it and why? You said aside from the science, and then you told us about the sticker.
Yeah, no, because firstly, no, that's definitely that's not a reason for, but it gives you a demonstration of what. Well, I beg your pardon?
What would the reason for having medical apartheid?
So I don't think we're going to go down that route. Secondly, I mean, other countries have gone down that route.
Great Britain.
But it's theirs choices, not ours. And I just don't think I'm going to be presented with that choice. And for me to be presented with that choice, I think something quite significant would have had to happen in society.
But it's only up the road.
So it all depends on. No,
it's only up the road. Wales and Scotland is a stone's throw from here.
Yeah,
it's on the same landmass.
Yeah.
So
what am I going to do? Get to the border in my lorry, and they're going to
go in and talk to Nicola Sturgeon about that, not me.
No. So will you follow the whip? If the government want you to vote for it, will you vote for it, or will you consider your conscience and vote the way you think is right? Clearly, you want vax passports to sound good.
I've already resigned from government once before, and I resigned as Chief Whip in the European Parliament over a matter of principle. I don't really.
But do you feel strongly enough about this? Do you not care?
No, I definitely care, but I'm not sure I'm in the same camp as you.
So if
but the Jews had to wear a yellow band.
That's what we're
going
to have to do.
This is what we're talking about.
So,
no, it is. No. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So
the
what
Jews
about
had to
putting
walk
stickers on someone's house? What happened?
What is this?
What happened back then?
What's this?
No. I thought that was a way.
That's just a weak argument, Chris. We're talking about apartheid here.
And I'm talking.
And you're talking about stickers.
Buying food. Will we be allowed to go to the
Yes, of course you will.
Of course you can't in France.
Yeah, but you're not in France. You're in Britain.
Or Australia, Chris. Would you have ever seen that?
Days ago, and if my dad had died in hospital, I wasn't allowed to say goodbye to him because I didn't have that house pass. Same for
There
me
you
in
go.
Belgium.
That's what
Do
we
you
are
see how
worried about.
disgusting that is?
I did see my dad die because they didn't let me in because I didn't have a vaccine.
You're
fighting
anyone
against
that wouldn't vote against it.
Well, let's just wait and see.
People have been denied rights.
It depends on what is a theoretical situation in the future. It all depends on what is built up to that, doesn't it?
But this is under COVID-19, not anything else. If something, another pathogen comes, fair enough.
Why would you vote in favour of that?
But it's not even a proposition on the table at the moment.
We know it's close.
If it was for now,
But it's in Scotland and it's in Wales, and that's literally, like I've just said, it's on the same landmass. I drive up the road and it's there.
Tony, it's called a testing bed to see how we
Yeah, that's right, because they've got to break them down to come to us and say, well, you're the only one, so you ain't got much choice. That's where they're going.
Okay.
It would not have occurred to anyone here 2 years ago, or to yourself, that there would even be a lockdown and that people would be
That's true.
stopped from seeing their loved ones in hospital.
That is true.
How inhumane is that?
Watching them die on their own.
Yeah.
For a virus that's got
It's not
99%
about-
chance of survival, it's just
It's
crazy.
not about following party politics, it's about moral compass.
moral compass.
It is, and I just have to say, there's an example right now of hospitals, by the way, because Adrian's wife's in hospital. He's allowed to see her for they live in the same house. He's allowed to see her for an hour a day. Is that humane? I don't think it is.
I'm afraid that sort of thing
not normal.
happened before COVID.
Not on that level.
No,
Not-
but
yeah.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid that's sort of thing.
rules all the time, and they just accumulate.
Yeah, no, that I do understand.
So why is medical treatment denied for people who don't have a PCR test? Everybody knows PCR is not a test. Kerry Smaller said it shouldn't be used for diagnosis. It's 100% false. So and I'm one of the, I was denied treatment because I don't want to have a test because it's not a test. I know I'm a medical person. So why are people denied medical treatment and in the future?
So PCR is a test, and it's a medical test. So I don't. It's slightly disagree with the root of your question, and that'll be down to the conditions in the clinic or the hospital, wherever you were denied medical treatment. But I've not.
To confirm diagnosis for a doctor. So that's it, just to confirm a diagnosis, so it's be established. That's not what it's doing.
It's medically
Clinical diagnosis isn't
You
being
don't need
fair.
test for TB.
It's
You
just
don't
test
need
you're
test.
positive or negative, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's not confirmed by a clinician.
Even the inventor of the test, who got the Nobel Prize for chemistry, said you cannot use this test to tell you somebody's sick. He actually said that. And he won the Nobel Prize for chemistry.
We've got
Kerry
three more
Mullis.
questions, and then we can open it to the floor if you like. Maria.
Laura Dodsworth wrote a book called The State of Fear. It was about having examined and spoken at great lengths to the behavioural insight team in the UK. She states that nobody in the UK could have taken a correct decision with the level of brainwashing that's occurred in the UK. If subjects of the UK have the right to medical privacy and informed consent, are you aware treatment without informed consent is assault and battery, the same tort and offence as rape?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah.
Aware.
Right, aware. Okay.
But you think a 12-year-old's owed to be informed
It's not.
But that is what we went. Conversation about the Gaelic competence.
They're not able to make a decision. They're too young. 12.
Are they told, with the Gaelic competence, are they each told, oh, by the way, this injection has killed almost 1,700 people already, it's just in this country alone. Are they told that? Is that part of the information?
Are you,
never
but,
was
but hang on, hang on.
BBC.
Chris won't be
Ever
even
priced
aware of that.
injection.
Are you aware of that? Those figures?
Are
you aware of that?
People have died. 1.2 million
This is
vaccinated.
spontaneously
Because-
Can we let
reported.
him answer,
Not-
please?
And 30,000 within 3 weeks of the vaccination. 30,000.
That's not on the BBC News, is it?
30,000.
I would
Is it-
like to hear
I've not heard those figures.
No.
I've not
This
heard
is
those
what's
figures.
this is what's alarming.
Local funeral directors.
They are on the MIHRA
They'll tell you the proper
Yellow
story.
Card report system on the government website. You are not told this as an MP, Member of Parliament. How are you meant to have informed consent on a decision of whether you support a
Measures.
Yeah, so this is.
if you are denied
When you elect a member of parliament, you are electing someone. You're not electing a doctor, a lawyer, In my case, and you might regret it, but you've elected a bloke who used to sell fruit and vegetables, right? So I go to other people for advice and I ask their advice in just about everything, because I am not as clever or as wise as all those others, right? And I have people who I completely trust, and I also have people that I'm wary of their advice. So everything I do is based on making sure that I get my questions answered by people who I trust.
And
okay.
But you were unaware of almost 1,700 dead so far. From
Yeah, I've not heard that figure. I definitely have not heard that figure.
Have you heard of the yellow advising you to push this?
The yellow card.
The people who are advising you to push these experimental vaccines
and not
hiding
making
this information from you, that should be paramount. If we are in the middle of an experiment, which we are, that we must record. That data's there, readily available. It's updated every 2 weeks. Okay, and so with that information being there, why, when we on the news, the government are telling us, there's 200 dead from COVID today, and 17 from the vaccine. Why is that information not sold to the public? Because if we are to have informed consent, we have to search out ourselves on the MHRA, and if I asked the next 10 people to walk past us here, can you tell me what the MHRA is? I would imagine if one knew what it was, I'd be surprised.
The majority of nurses do not know about the yellow card system.
Do not?
No,
They don't.
It's at least, it's only about 15%.
Really? I'd be surprised. I'd generally be surprised by that.
I've just been speaking to nurses,
the majority of
them nurses and didn't know about it. They haven't been trained.
No, I genuinely would have thought most nurses would have known about this.
Please check that point.
But when Boris goes on this little podium, he should mention the yellow card scheme. That should be mandatory to report any side effects of the vaccine.
Yeah, but to be honest,
we're moving on now. This lady did try and get in.
a quick word, yes.
Right. I emailed you some time ago and asked you if you knew how many deaths there had been from the COVID vaccination. You didn't come back to me for some time, and then you got one of your staff to reply to me, and I was told there are zero deaths. I took great pleasure in coming back to you and telling you just how many there were at that time. So please don't say you don't know this stuff. And if you don't, then you should be thoroughly ashamed. And I've emailed you several times. You know me as Sue from Gilsbury.
Okay, Sue from Gilsbury. Thank you very much.
Who's the next question?
You don't come back on the difficult questions.
I don't come back.
You don't know the answers, that's why.
Chris, getting back to Gillick competence, which we've talked about, and which you're happy to rely on from a clinician's opinion and the opinion of a 12-year-old making a decision regarding.
A parent.
No, it doesn't necessarily need to involve the parent. The kids don't need parental consent. They can make their interaction with the clinician.
There's even been children being given consent and still being jabbed.
Sorry?
There's even been children not given consent by their parents and being jabbed because they've been in school.
Yes, so they've been assessed.
I've not heard one case of that.
Right.
You haven't heard anything.
Your person who you referenced, Mr. Chris Whitty, has come out and said that he's happy for these 12-year-olds to make this decision without their parents being involved. So at the age of 12, a child can supposedly display sufficient competence to a clinician to say, yes, I consent to being injected with a substance that is not a vaccine, but called a vaccine. It is a genetic modification procedure. It is brand new. It has never been used. It has never been successfully trialled. The times when it has been trialled in the past, they've got as far as the animal models and all the animals have died, so they've stopped doing it. So this rollout of this vaccine is actually the first ongoing human trial that an mRNA vaccine has. A 12-year-old child, in your opinion, according to what you've said you support and are prepared to support, this 12-year-old child is competent to consent to having this procedure, despite the fact that it may cause health issues, it may cause long-term health issues. There is no long-term health data on it because there has not been a sufficient period of time since this thing's been rolled out for there to be any long-term data. But on that basis, you're happy that they can make this decision, this informed consent decision, at the age of 12 to have this procedure. It might harm them irrevocably, it might kill them. In your opinion, if you're happy to support that, is that 12-year-old child also competent to consent to having sex?
So I don't see the two combined in any way, shape, or form.
It is a question. It's a question
the
about
JCVI,
competence. It's a question
when they
about
recommend-
being
when-
competent to make a decision about something that is life changing.
I'm afraid I go with what the JCVI.
The JVCI said don't do it.
No,
And your government has ignored it. They didn't give them an open book, really, but they've used it and said, well.
I thought I saw a press conference where that was fairly straightforward. But anyway.
Okay, would you be happy if
For a
you
virus
came
that doesn't
home
kill
from
kids.
school and said, oh, I was vaccinated today, but you didn't give your consent? Would you be okay about that?
No.
Is it ethical?
I wouldn't be happy with that. But
It's unethical
well,
and criminal.
I would say it's. Yeah, I'd say it probably is unethical. But I can't believe that has happened.
It will happen.
But it
because
hasn't,
the
has it?
No, because the health people that are giving the vaccinations are able to get the consent from the children under Gillett competency. They
But
don't need the consent of parents. That's the whole point of that legal
No,
precedent.
but, and as you pointed out to me, children can also say no.
But they're not going to be taught to say no because the parents don't know what giving
Promote,
But they-
because they're not told about deaths and injuries, because you didn't know.
No,
You didn't know the deaths and
I don't know the numbers, but I know that people suffer.
Informed consent.
So you didn't have informed consent when you had your jab?
Right, so I
End
didn't
of.
have informed consent when I got my jab. So when I take, well, fair enough.
So if we said, hello little Billy, here's a safe vaccine, save granny with it. Oh, you're not going to tell them as well. There's over 400 cases of myocarditis, which is rarely seen in day-to-day medical life. Don't worry about that. You possibly have other heart issues, neurological issues. 1,700 are almost dead already.
Infertility.
Do you want to go ahead? That information is not available to them. It's being withheld. It's being withheld from yourself. So when it comes to Gillett competence, there is no
I think
information.
it's being withheld.
Well, you don't know.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
But you knew people had died from the vaccine.
No,
but the BBC cannot be trusted.
No, they can't.
Chris, did you know that people who died from the vaccine, and they said there were 300
I don't recall seeing a report of someone
So you
died.
didn't know that anybody had died from the vaccine?
I assumed that there'd be some, unfortunately there would be some people, because people die from taking paracetamol and all sorts of things.
They do.
But are you surprised to hear that 1,700 people, approximately 1,700 people, have been
Yes,
reported
I am.
as died? And that is from the yellow card.
Yeah, which is no more than
Which is
10%, no more.
Never
If
been
10%. Yeah,
if.
if. That's if 10%.
Alarm bells are ringing heavily for you now.
Because never
If that's a
before.
surprise,
Yeah.
alarm
How
bells
do you
must
feel?
be ringing heavily for you now.
Chris, there's a great correlation you can do. If you look at the figures in December, January, when they first started giving the vaccinations, they were using 1 vial per person. And they thought, oh, we can make it go twice as far. We use 2 portions, then 4 portions. Have a look at the number of deaths in late December, January, February, until they got down to 6 injections per vial. And you'll see that the concentration has killed
The
people.
massive rise, yes, indeed.
When you say the concentration, sorry. I
Yeah,
didn't-
so 1 vial they used to give to 1 person.
Yeah.
Then they thought, oh, we can make 2 people a dose out of 1 vial. Then 4 people a dose out of 1 vial. So if they diluted it, watered it, they gave too much. And you see that there's a huge number of deaths.
So the earlier ones.
Yeah, in January, February, the figures rocketed as they first started giving the vaccinations.
Right, and then, sorry, I misunderstood.
Can I just ask you a question? Obviously they make vaccines in batches. Well, a doctor's just discovered, so I'm not saying it's across the whole range, but he discovered a live parasite in one of the vaccines. And because they're injecting this spike protein into people, as your capillaries get smaller and smaller and your blood flows through your body, your blood sees these little spikes and then it forms a clot. Now anyone who does a D-dimer blood test, the woman who used to run my lab, she's done one, and she's absolutely bricking herself because she knows what the implications of that D-dimer blood test is.
Chris doesn't know what a D-dimer,
maybe you should
with
get one.
respect to him, do you know what a D-dimer blood test is?
Be disappointed to know that you've had an
yeah, it's
experimental-
microscopic. It's microscopic blood clots.
I was pretty aware that.
Yeah,
was ya?
they're
You said a minute ago that
microscopic,
you
Chris.
wasn't
They're
aware.
microscopic blood
about
clots,
the-
and you can only see them under that D-dimer. You can't see it under a normal microscope.
in the light of these figures of 1,700 deaths, which we've never, ever seen in any vaccine before, would you then start asking questions on our behalf at Parliament as to why we're not pausing these vaccine rollouts? Because we've never got past 50 before on any medical trial before it stopped. But so 50 deaths ended.
Wait a minute, let Chris answer that question, please. That's an important question.
I will, when you give me the questions, I will go back and I will ask those questions because, as I say, I'm not an expert. And the way I go about my business is I ask people who do know the answers.
I understand. Yeah.
Sorry, one question.
So, none of us are experts, right? None of us are medical experts here. But what I see looking around here, I see 30 or 40 people that have made a colossal effort to educate themselves on what's actually happening in this country right now. I'm looking at the representative of those people who appears to know absolutely nothing. You don't know about the virus, you don't know the figures, you don't know about the vaccine, you don't know the figures, you don't know about the deaths, you don't know about the figures, and yet you appear to represent us in some way. I would like to know, what are you going to do to educate yourself so that you can actually represent the people here who have these concerns?
Yeah, I feel I represent a decent chunk of my constituency and the vast majority.
Yeah, the mass who doesn't research anything.
I just don't feel you're getting the correct information, Chris.
Yeah,
you're being fed information, but I don't think, and you're acting, you're voting on that information, but you're not actually representing the genuine concerns of a growing number of people in this country and certainly in this constituency.
Yeah, the point being, if a car had a problem, a fault, a brake problem, and 5 crashed, there would be a recall, mass recall the car, stop quickly.
There would be.
Nearly 1,700 dead. I asked you earlier, are the alarm bells not ringing? Because if you were selling cars and 1,700 of them had killed people, you would be expected to pull that right back. Is that correct?
There would be a recall.
One lemon on your fruit and veg stall.
Is that correct?
What do you do, Chris? Do you keep using the supplier?
Is it correct? You would stop the rollout.
Strange enough, the answer to that question would have been yes.
You would stop the rollout?
No, you'd keep using the supplier, but you
would
keep on
you
maintaining your quality check.
Would you stop the rollout of the cars for Chris? Would you stop the rollout of the cars or the vaccine if you knew it was killing 1,700 in 5 months?
So I believe this vaccine is saving the economy and the lives of hundreds of thousands of people.
Would you stop the rollout?
That's what I believe.
It's killing 1,700 people.
No, it doesn't. That's a government mantra, though. That is a government mantra.
I
It's
just read
not
the
you
figures this
thinking.
morning
That's
from the
not
Office
you.
of National Statistics. They didn't know the figures of how many children this is being rolled out to, but already teenage deaths are at 47%. We know also, based on the trials of Pfizer in America, there was 83% adverse reactions. That is why the JCVI said that it didn't outweigh, the risks didn't outweigh the benefits. And yet it's just carried on. It's really serious. Children are going to die in schools. It's happened in Australia.
You shouldn't be defending that, Chris. That's right.
Let Chris answer, please.
I said I'll try and get the answers to the questions I've been given, but I do believe that the vaccine is a success and will continue to be.
Can we just talk about the elephant in the room?
I do.
Right, can we talk about the elephant in the room, which
But
is
what's the,
ivermectin?
Chris? Maria, can I ask what is the survival rate of COVID? Do you know that?
The survival rate of COVID.
Yeah.
Well, you said earlier it was 99.9%.
It's slightly
So
better,
why would
99.99.
It's actually more, but so is it really necessary to roll out experimental mRNA vaccine for something like that? And lock down and break the economy?
Every advisor to government at senior level said yes, and the government said yes.
Yeah, but forget that, Chris. Just what you think. What do you think as a human being?
From your heart.
From your heart. What do you think?
I think vaccines are the right thing.
For a virus that you've got 99.99% chance of survival.
Yeah, well, whatever those figures are, whatever the correct figures are, yes.
We're not talking about vaccines here, Chris. We're talking about this vaccine.
Yeah,
We're not anti-vaxxers.
Please note, I've never said that you were. No.
So zero
No, we're not.
children
I
dead.
know.
Zero healthy children dead from SARS-CoV-2.
Yes.
COVID-19, zero. Consider that number.
Yeah.
1,700 dead almost from the vaccine. Do you know the risk that's going to be put onto these children?
Because it's.
There's already more deaths to the children than there is from
Huge risk
COVID.
from vaccine. Do you support that?
So
Zero
yeah,
risk from
because
COVID.
if the scientists say it's the right thing to do, then yeah, I support the
Well,
order.
science is compromised.
It's not good.
It's compromised, Chris.
Chris, my name's Tony, right? And I'm just going to ask you, for the record, are you able to categorically reassure us that your continued support for this government's coronavirus measures is not motivated by any form of coercion, incentivism or loyalty or allegiance beyond that owned to your constituents or affirmed by your parliamentary oath? Yes.
Can you please, at least for the sake of the children of this country, get down to a minute, the whole country, you get to sit and speak to the people in charge. Could you please at least enforce that parents should have good consent and that guilt competency should be overruled because the Paramountcy of the Children Act makes it above the guilt competence. It does, legally.
I think the problem is, as well, Chris, and I try to understand it, there's a lot of people who are compartmentalised in this whole thing, and they don't, even yourself, a guy in your position, we've come out with stuff here, we're staggered that you don't know the things that we're talking about, honestly, and we're not being horrible, and I thank you for standing here and taking it, you know, guys, because it mustn't be easy, all of us lot here going, but mate, seriously, mate, this is serious now, this is like endgame stuff. When children's lives are at risk now, if you're an adult and you've got the brain and the mind and you haven't researched this and you've gone and queued up for that jab, that's your decision. But when it comes to children, there's a line in the sand. That's why these people are here. Most of them out there don't even, the people out there in Daventry, they don't even know there's a line because they don't know it exists.
They don't know it's not tested, they all believe.
And they all trust the government.
They think we're conspiracy theorists. We've heard all the mantras. Everyone here's heard them. Anti-vax.
Because of the one-sided promoting the schools.
Yeah, we've all had
government
it. We've had
paid
it.
the
We're
most
getting it all
amount
the
of
time.
advertising ever in the last year to papers and the press. There's something like 380 million. They're the biggest advertiser.
Big pharma. That's scary.
Can I just mention, so in that pack that I handed you, there's a small bit of evidence that's just the tip of the iceberg of the evidence that's out there, Chris. Okay? It includes a document published actually in April 2020 by Dr. Kevin P. Corbett. He's an independent research consultant. And the report says, where is the evidence for the existence of the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 and the accuracy of the tests? And there's lots and lots of links in there, and there's also a notice of liability that we have served you. We have all these witnesses here, so thank you very much for accepting it and listening to our questions, but you are on notice.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, any more questions?
Part one, talking about credit insurance, as a company owner in Daventry, for instance, we've had people from health and safety coming to check our machines are working okay, we're using large lubricants and stuff like that. When it comes to credit insurance for Pfizer, that's one of the vaccines, obviously, there seems to be a ball going between Public Health England and the GRFA saying they have double checked. Oh no, because they basically GRFA said Public Health has checked it, and Public Health England says no, we haven't. So it seems that only Pfizer's data is there, doing their own quality assurance, and the government's going along with it, and something is not working within the other departments that should be doing their job properly. That's worth investigating as well.
It's the fox looking after the hen house, essentially, isn't it?
We've given them a lot, and they're not liable for anything, and they're not being checked that things are going on. Okay. And we don't feel safe.
And please, could you not just trust what they're telling you, but research what we told you, please, please.
And you can reach out to Sarah, and she's got so much information. Reach out and ask her some questions anytime, and she would gladly help.
And just,
I'll give you my email address.
Chris, could I ask a slightly related COVID question? Could you ask Baroness Veer to sort out the backlog down at Swansea of the 54,000 truck driving licences that are waiting renewal, the 40,000 driving tests, and all this hysteria about supermarkets not having food, fuel not being in tankers, blaming Brexit, blaming the Russians, blaming everybody else when it's a problem in Swansea. Would you like a little couple of figures just to cogitate on your way home? 1992, you won't know this, the RHA said there was going to be 88,000 truck drivers short in the UK. We're only short 100,000. Now, I'm just a poor ex-truck driver, but 54,000 driving licences, 40,000 cancelled tests is 94,000 trucks. Yeah. There is no shortage of resource in this country, and we are in the golden triangle for distribution. And could you ask a colleague in the post office why they are stealing drivers from Tesco's, Sainsbury's and all the other distribution companies in the Daventry International Railway Park in order to keep the Christmas stuff moving that's not coming from China?
Yeah. Are you saying they've made it all up, this crisis?
Oh no, that'll be a conspiracy theory.
Of course.
You know I don't do those.
You don't do those are facts and verifiable. Please have a word with Baroness Veer, because I was expecting a letter from Boris and I might get behind the wheel, but I got a Baroness, so I want it coming from the top.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
No, thanks for your
Any
time.
questions, Chris? Honestly, send them to Sarah, because we've got tons and tons of information. I wouldn't trust the science that you're
fair enough. And I do know that some of you were wary about coming, and so the only reason that Amy is here is because she works for me, and so I mean, some of the things I've said I would forget if Amy wasn't here. But even if you completely disagree with me, hate me after all this, or take the call for whatever it is later, I'm still your MP until I'm not your MP, and I will always see, right?
You have our word, we're not going to stick in your house.
No.
You only represent the vast majority.
We'd stick at the right house.
I wouldn't like that to start, no. But I don't hide it from you guys, so please don't hide it from me. All right? And just because it did bother me about the stickers, it really did. Yeah, if you could please let whoever it is know, they can come and see me anytime. I'll buy them a coffee, which has got a horrible caffeine drug in it, but I'll take it. But seriously, just come to me, and I will talk to people and answer their questions. I might not answer them in the way you want or inadequately, but no one needs any of the other stuff. I try and be as successful as I can.
I think most people here, Chris, waking up at the moment for the last more than a year, worried sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're waking up every single day worried sick.
Anxiety, it's terrible.
Why should we do that and you just live your life and have a nice time?
And we see what looks really frightening, like an experimental jab being rolled out to the whole population. It was said it was for vulnerable and old people, and suddenly we're up to 12-year-olds.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah. How's this happened?
I'm just saying I am accessible, and come and talk to me with your issues. I will listen. I will try and answer the questions that people have raised.
So reference the emergency powers that I believe are being voted for the continuation of the government's emergency powers.
That's just been stretched a bit real because we're all going on holiday.
Come on, look, poor old Chris needs to go.
Yes. It's the 18th of October when the
Yes, it's stretched to the 18th now. We would expect.
Do your own research.
Yeah, please promise that you're going to look in what we've said.
I will, because I'm going to answer. I am going to also try and answer your questions.
As well, to know what's going to go on with your body.
Thank you, Chris. Please. I beg you, as a human being, please.
Yeah. For the children.
Okay.
It's not a conspiracy theory.
We'll send you minutes over.
That's great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for your time.